are live in the living color right here from Scimitar Studios in Denville, New Jersey. Glad you could join us here for the open mic program right here on Sports Talk Nation, the YouTube channel for the Sports Talk Nation, and also the home for the open mic program. Folks, glad to be with you here today, as not on Blog Talk Radio today, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, as right now we're trying to do a few different things here today, and we'll start doing a few different things here on the open mic program. Usually we broadcast on a Blog Talk Radio network, but you know, we've gotten such great response on the YouTube channel, we decided to do an episode strictly on YouTube here today. And again, we're glad you could join us here today for this episode, as we'll spend some time here talking about a number of different things going on in Major League Baseball. A lot of interesting headlines, if you will, in the New York area. You got the Mets with Matt Harvey. You got that drama situation playing out. We'll talk about that in a minute. You got a story coming out with Julius Familia, him landing on the disabled list with a blood clot. Could be a very long time before we see him again. We'll discuss that in a few minutes. And also the retirement of Derek Jeter, the retirement of his jersey, I should say, as number 2 will be retired on Sunday evening. So a lot of things going on in New York. And also, you go around Major League Baseball, a lot of things going on as well. Big series this weekend between the Colorado Rockies and the Los Angeles Dodgers, as they are going to be battling for first place. The Rockies, who, by the way, are 10 games over 500, and right now the second-best team in the National League behind the Washington Nationals, as they continue to surprise people, and now here into the month of May, into the second week of May, here in 2017. But before we get into all of that, let's backtrack just a little bit and really to open up the show talking about the big story that came out this week, and that is the Matt Harvey situation in New York with the New York Mets. And the Mets have been this roller coaster for really the entire season. A couple weeks ago, we came on these airwaves, and we talked about on the Blog Talk Radio Network, and you can go back and listen to that episode on the Open Mic channel on Blog Talk Radio. As we all know, Syndergaard had the lat muscle injury, and after the MRI revealed the lat injury last week, and as a result, he's not going to be out until at least August. So the Mets are already without their top starter, and there were a lot of people to blame for that. I talked about that at nauseum with the Mets front office, as well as Syndergaard himself, when he refused to have the MRI after he had skipped the start against the Atlanta Braves a couple weeks ago, ended up coming back after skipping that MRI, and then had the lat injury, and a lot of that had to play into one another, and there were a lot of people to blame for that. Now we have the Matt Harvey drama that has played out here over the last several days, and as we all know, everyone probably knows about the story right at this point, Matt Harvey decided to not show up to Citi Field when he was scheduled to. Now, he wasn't going to start this game. This was going to be last weekend. He wasn't set to start until Sunday, but decided that night, before that game, on Friday night, late Friday night, early Saturday morning, to go out, have some drinks, have some fun with his friends. He's fine. That's fine. He can do whatever he wants. He's a grown man, 28 years old. I have no problem with that. Look, baseball players are going to go out. Baseball players are going to have a good time after a game. Baseball players are going to go out there after the game. They're going to want to just relax, get away from the stadium, have a couple of drinks. I have no problem with that. What happened, though, was this. Harvey went out there after spending a night of partying until about 4 a.m., from what I've read in various newspapers this week, decided, and he even admitted to this in his press conference, that he then went out golfing that morning, Saturday morning, the day before he has to make a start, and then decided, after having a migraine, being too tired from being up all night and then all morning, decided not to show up to the stadium. And that's just bad decorum. It looks really, really bad for Matt Harvey. And it's just another example of a guy who is a prima donna, a guy who thinks that he is better than everybody else, doesn't feel he needs to answer to anybody. And this time, the Mets decided to put their foot down, and good for them. Because this has been a history of incidents with Harvey for quite some time. You go back over the years with the Mets and Matt Harvey, and you cannot find a situation where he is causing a problem for this team. Whether it be shortly after his surgery for Tommy John surgery, and he is going through the recovery process, he tried to make a push to come back much sooner, if you remember this, much sooner than he was expected to come back from that injury. The Mets told him, no, do not do that. Okay, so he heeded that warning. Then we had his agent, Scott Boras, before the 2015 season ended, he came out and said, look, my pitcher needs to pitch a certain amount of innings. He's not going to be allowed to pitch more than 180 innings. And that caused a big fervor before the season ever ended and before the Mets ever got into the postseason. Then we had the situation in the playoffs that same year where Harvey did the same exact thing, decided not to show up for a scheduled mandatory practice before the divisional series with his team at Citi Field. And the Mets, from the PR standpoint, tried to sweep it under the rug just a little bit. They tried to take care of it in-house. David Wright, they had him speak to Harvey at the time. But even that didn't get through to this guy. So here we are now 2 years later, after all these incidents have begun to pile up, with Matt Harvey not pitching as a great pitcher anymore. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Last year, he came crashing back down to earth when 4-10 had an ERA approaching 5 before he got injured at the end of the year with the blood clot and ended up missing the entire season with the surgery. Comes back this year, has been equally bad this year. ERA over 5, 5.14. Hasn't pitched well, 2-2 record. He will pitch tonight, of course, against Milwaukee. But this guy, in over the last 2 years, is 6-10 with a 4.93 ERA. He is no longer the Dark Knight. He is not the Broadway Joe of baseball here in New York. He is Broadway Schmo. Anytime you have a guy who thinks he's better than what he is and better than everybody else and can't seem to prove it on the field is a schmo. It's simple as that. This guy needed to get slapped hard by the Mets. And it was about time the Mets went out there and said, hey, look, you can't push this around anymore. You're not going to go out there and it's time for the Mets to go out there and say, look, we're not going to stand here and have you push us around like this anymore. We are going to stand pat. And this is a franchise right now. When you look at the shape of this team as far as the pitching is concerned, there's nothing but questions right now. Questions about Noah Syndergaard and his health. Questions about guys like Seth Lugo and Steven Matz and Zach Wheeler. Are those guys going to be part of the solution long term? And now questions about whether Matt Harvey's going to be here, a part of the situation or not. So Matt Harvey isn't the ace of this team. If you ask me, put a gun to my head, say, who's the ace of this team? I'll tell you right now, it's going to be Jacob deGrom. Now, look, I understand that Noah Syndergaard, when he's right, is as good as it gets. The guy tops 100 miles an hour. I get that. But when I look at a guy who's an ace, I look at a guy who's consistently good all the time, and the guy who's consistently good all the time and is always there for his team has been Noah Syndergaard. I know the wins and losses don't show it this year. He's only 2-1. But think about this, folks. 60 strikeouts, only 19 walks. ERA's at 3.80. Okay, it's a little bit high, but it's not bad. Really, the guy's been up there in wins, strikeouts, ERA. Every year he's been up here now 3 years for this Mets team. He's the ace, okay? And when you look at this team long term, when you look at what this team is going to do as far as what the future holds for this pitching staff, this team is going to sign deGrom to a contract. There's no doubt about it. Unless they get into an ugly contract dispute in a couple of years, he is going to be here long term. Noah Syndergaard, you would have to imagine, same thing. The Mets are going to do everything they can to lock him up. So it puts Harvey in a spot now, and this is the reason why the Mets put their foot down on this guy, where they have to say, look, you haven't pitched well. You haven't been pitching well for a long time now. You're a prima donna. We have two guys here that are better than you and have been pitching better than you for the last couple of years. Why should we give Matt Harvey a contract? Why should we? That's the thought process here for the Mets, and that is the right thought process here for the Mets. And Harvey, who has a contract through 2018, he's in the arbitration years now. At this point in his career, the Mets are going to, not now, because right now Matt Harvey has no trade value whatsoever. The Mets at some point here between now and the end of next season, really by the end of the trade deadline next year, I should say, because come the end of next season, he's going to be a free agent and he's going to sign wherever he wants. They're going to try to trade him out of here. This relationship has gone beyond reproach. I mentioned earlier all the scenarios where he has gotten into scuffles with the Mets front office, gotten into it with Terry Collins, and I haven't even mentioned the World Series where he demanded that he stay in the game in Game 5. Now, a lot of people have applauded Harvey for doing so, but think about it. He put himself before the team in that situation. He was up 2-0 in that game. Should the Mets go to the bullpen now? Look, I don't know what would have happened with Jarius Familia in that ninth inning. With the way Familia has been pitching over the last couple of years, he probably would have blown it. But you put your closer in that spot in that game, up 2-0 in the World Series. You win that game, and you go back to Kansas City down 3-2. No, instead Harvey's got to be out there. He wants to be out there no matter what. Give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, and he blows the game in the ninth inning. Things like this are what reason why Matt Harvey is not the Dark Knight. All these reasons are why he's not the Dark Knight anymore. And this episode, of course, notwithstanding, with this insubordination of team rules, being out too late, playing golf the next day, getting a migraine headache, not telling your team, and I know that there were claims that he had texted Dan Worth, and that's not good enough, folks. You gotta be there. He's gotta be there for his team. He's not even starting that day. He's gotta be there. And it's not the first time he's been unprepared. Remember, when Syndergaard went down, when the Mets decided to skip Syndergaard that start against Atlanta, who got the ball that day? It was Matt Harvey. Terry Collins said that he was ready to go, but then Matt Harvey told the media after the game, he wasn't ready to go in that game. Well, whose fault is that? That's Matt Harvey's fault. It's got to be ready. Let's say the Mets, who had, I think it was Gesellman started that game against Miami that night. Against Miami that night, the night that he skipped out. Let's say Gesellman got hurt. Who would have been there to start that game if Gesellman got hurt? And Matt Harvey's not there. That's a problem. You got to be there, Matt Harvey. You got to be ready to go to help your team. And he was not there to help his team. And that's why eventually the breakup between Matt Harvey and the Mets is going to happen sooner rather than later. And as I said it before, will it happen this year? No, because the guy has no trade value. You've heard it from everybody out there this week about the trade value, and they're absolutely right. He has no trade value right now. No team out there is going to want to take this guy because of his attitude, because of the issues he's had. And they're not, compared to some other guys, yes, okay, some of the off-field issues aren't as bad as some other guys, but they are PR issues, if you will, that no team is going to want to deal with. And he certainly has not been pitching like the guy that we thought he was a couple of years ago, when he was a 9-game winner, when he was an all-star for this team, starting in the all-star game back in 2013. Those days are long ago. And unless he goes out there tonight, and this is going to be a great matchup here against the Brewers tonight, tonight for the Mets when they're out there in Milwaukee, all eyes are going to be on Matt Harvey tonight. Can Matt Harvey go out there and pitch a great game tonight? Can he go out there and pitch like the guy we know he can be? Is he going to grab the ball and be the bulldog Matt Harvey that we got used to over the years? Or is he going to get smacked around by Eric Thames and the Milwaukee Brewers? Or have an uneven performance where you really can't say it was good or bad and ends up getting a no decision or something like that? I think that's more likely what's going to happen, but we'll see. But from here on out, if Matt Harvey wants to be out of town, if he wants to be not part of the Mets in future years, then he's got to go out there and pitch a great game, not just tonight, but for the rest of the season. He's got to be brilliant for the rest of the year. In my mind, he's got to give the Mets 12, 13, 14 wins. Get that ERA near 3, if not even below 3, which right now looks like an impossibility for that matter, but he's got to try to do that if he wants that much to get out of town. As far as the press conference he had the other day, I personally felt, just listening to it was an 8-minute press conference. He actually said, I actually kept track of this because I actually had to listen to it a second time. He said the word apologize 13 times. He said embarrassed 5 times. So he said all these teams, apology, a million times, and you never really felt it was a sincere apology. Skipped over the idea of filing a grievance, even though we know that there was that story out there that he was going to file a grievance against the Mets for the money that he had lost over the 3 days he's been suspended. Again, another indication that this guy in New York, not too much long that he's going to be here with the New York Mets. But between now and then, as I said before, he's got to go out there and pitch the best baseball he can pitch to not just help the Mets, but help his case to get out of here within the next couple of seasons. So that's where we are with the Matt Harvey situation in regards to the Mets. And really, it's been a bizarre season for the Mets because as it's gone from one day to the next, as this team sits here at 16 and 17, and they are in second place in this division, and they are how many games back out of Washington now? They are, just waiting for this thing to come up here, they are 5.5 back of Washington coming into Friday night. All right? 5.5 back. And now the latest news coming out of the Metland is that Jeurys Familia is going to be out. We don't know how long, as he goes down with a blood clot in his shoulder. And one thing I did read here today, very interesting story coming out of the New York Post here in the New York tri-state area. I want to get to you the exact language, the exact so-called diagnosis of what this could be. They spoke to Todd Breland. Now, he's not an official Met orthopedist here, but they spoke to him anyway for the New York Post, and they said that it could be thoracic outlet syndrome, which is the same injury that Matt Harvey had last year, and we all know he missed the last half of the season, the entire last half of the season, when he had the surgery in July. Now, if this is true, and Jeurys Familia will require surgery for this blood clot in his shoulder, then there's a good chance we won't see him this year. There's a good chance maybe if we do see him again this year, at least until the end of the year, if not the last part of the year, like August, September. So I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to diagnose this injury. But if everything that I read here from the New York Post regarding citing the Matt Harvey injury from last year, citing a Dylan G injury where he had a blood clot in his shoulder, where he missed the entire season, it does not look good for Jeurys Familia. And Familia had a weird year to begin with anyway, with the domestic abuse case that was levied against them, then pulled back. Major League Baseball then deciding to suspend him 15 games for this at the start of this year because of that domestic abuse case, and then comes back, pitches okay, and then wasn't great, but okay. He had a lot of issue with walks and guys getting on base. Implodes the other day against the Giants in a game where the Mets have a chance to sweep a series against a bad San Francisco Giants team, and he blows it, gives up 4 runs in that 9th inning, walks a pair, his first blown save of the season, and he is now out for an indefinite amount of time here for the New York Mets, and this New York Mets team now is going to have to find a way to get a closer. They're going to look to Addison Reed, which is fine. Addison Reed started the year as the closer anyway for this team, and he's been okay this year. And they also have guys like Hansel Robles and Dre Blevins, Josh Edgen. All those guys have pitched well this year, but they've also thrown a lot of innings, especially Robles, who's thrown 19 innings already this year for this Mets team. So they're going to need a lot of help in that bullpen. They already needed help in that bullpen to begin with. Now, there's already a lot of speculation. What did the Mets do? Did they go out there and trade for somebody? I can tell you right now, at this point in the year, it's too early to sit here and say the Mets should go out there and make a trade. Yes, over the next couple of months, if this team stays in it, yes, they're going to have to go out there and improve this bullpen. But if you ask me, do I think they're going to go out there and make a trade now? The answer is probably not. They're going to look in-house. They're going to look to Blevins to close. They may look down on the farm and see who's pitching well right now. Maybe they call somebody up, call another arm up. They're going to have to, at least to fill the roster spot, and go from that point on. Now, I saw some speculation about David Robertson, who's with the Chicago White Sox. Well, the White Sox, who were in first place a week ago when we were on talking about the Cubs and the White Sox with Robert Villarreal, right now they have not played well. They've lost 5 in a row. They're now in 4th place in the Central, in the American League Central, but they're only 2.5 out. And that's a division that is by far and away not decided at all. Cleveland's been inconsistent. Minnesota right now is in first place. Kansas City's had a horrible year. Detroit's been mediocre. So I can't sit here and tell you that the White Sox are ready to trade off David Robertson right now at this point of the year. I know that name has been floated out there. And you can even say the same thing with Kelvin Herrera out there in Kansas City with the Royals, who are, yes, 8 under 500, but only 5.5 out in the AL Central. So it's too early to sit there and say the Mets have to get a closer now. Yes, it would be nice if they could, but at this point of the year, there really isn't that kind of guy available for them at this moment of time. They're going to have to go out there, continue to plug along with the pieces they have, and hope that they can get some good, solid outings out of that bullpen, especially with the pitching staff. Right now, there's nothing but question marks all over it here for the New York Mets. So that's where they are now at this point in the season as we take a look at the Mets going up against the Milwaukee Brewers. And, it will be a very interesting series this weekend. Excuse me. Brewers only 2 back of the St. Louis Cardinals, who have now pole vaulted into first place in the National League Central. It wasn't that long ago, just a few days ago, Cardinals were in last place. They were a team that really didn't seem to have a lot of answers, but they've now won 6 in a row. They're now in first place in the Central. The Reds, who were in first place, are now a half game back, and then it's the Brewers at 18 and 17. Brewers right now are a half game ahead of the defending champion Cubs, who really have been struggling, and we'll talk more about them in a second, but it'll be an interesting series between the Mets and the Brewers. Looking forward to seeing this guy, Eric Thames, who's been around. I mean, he's played in Asia for most of his career. A guy who's just been killing the baseball right now. 13 home runs, 25 RBIs. He has 39 hits and 118 at-bats. He has a .331 batting average. He has been just killing the baseball for this team. They also have a guy named Travis Shaw, who has 26 RBIs this year for the Milwaukee Brewers. So they have been playing good baseball out there in Milwaukee. They just need to get some consistency going. Their pitching staff has been The starting pitching with Willie Peralta, with Zach Davies, not so great. So they got to get that straightened out in that department. But the hitting has been there for the Brewers, who are right now a game over 500. And you can argue, right now, a better team than the Mets. And those two teams will play each other this weekend. One more thing on the Mets here before we move on to Derek Jeter and the Yankees, which is more important this weekend. There was a story in the New York Post today about Tim Tebow. And I understand that, look, why am I talking about Tim Tebow? But the story in the Post about Tebow was that he was, quote-unquote, hitting very well. He had an OPS of 849 down there in his last 16 games. And there was a speculation that maybe the Mets would consider promoting Tebow within the minor leagues, moving him from where he is right now in Class A with Columbia to Double A, perhaps. Well, let me tell you something. I'm going to put some ice-cold water in this. There is no reason whatsoever for the Mets to promote Tim Tebow. None at all. The guy's hitting .250. He has spent much of the year struggling to even get to .250. He hasn't even hit over .250 at this point this year. He's hitting only .136 against lefties. He's hitting only .282 against righties, which is okay, but for a left-handed hitter against right-handed pitchers, he should be hitting better than .282 against right-handed pitching, especially down in the minor leagues. Yes, for a guy who has been a novice at the sport, has he done okay? Yes, he has. But there's no reason for the Mets to go out there and promote a guy when he's clearly not ready, and to do it in spite of the other players down there on the farm, and in spite of the other players down there in Single A. I mean, the Mets do have a couple of guys, even on the Charleston team, or a couple players down on the Columbia team, I should say, who are hitting and playing well. They've got like Michael Paz, who has hit well at second base. He's hitting .262 with 4 home runs and 21 RBIs. Jordan Humphreys has pitched very well for the Fireflies. He's 6-0. ERA that's under 2. So there's a guy that you could promote as well. In other words, there are guys down there who are more deserving of a promotion from Single A to Double A or even another level of Single A than Tim Tebow. There are. There's no reason for Tim Tebow to get a promotion because he's Tim Tebow. If that's the only reason the Mets are going to promote Tim Tebow, then they're going to have a big problem on their hands. And I could see it too, where we're sitting here come September, and the Mets say, you know what, we're going to put Tim Tebow on the 40-man roster because he's Tim Tebow. That cannot happen. If the Mets are serious about developing Tebow, and if Tebow's serious about becoming a baseball player, he's got to spend the entire season down there in Single A with the Fireflies for the entire season, period. There should be no movement with Tim Tebow. None. He's got to learn the rigors of the sport, and he's got to try to hone his craft, develop a reputation, develop a resume before he gets any kind of promotion whatsoever. I don't want to see a promotion because of who he is, because of his celebrity. And I'm sure even Tim Tebow would probably tell you that. Don't promote me because I'm Tim Tebow, former quarterback of the Broncos and the Jets, and an ESPN analyst. That should not happen. Give the kids who are down there in the minor leagues who are deserving of promotion a promotion. That's it. I don't think we'll see any promotion. I know the article is just speculation, and I wasted enough time on the topic as it is. But until we actually see Tebow truly develop as a baseball player, there's no reason for a promotion at all on Tebow. Enough with the Mets. Let's move on, folks. Let's move on to the New York Yankees. They're playing the Houston Astros this weekend. Great series at the stadium as you have the first place Astros against the first place Yankees. We will start to talk about one thing we did in spring training. Again, if you remember, we went from team to team to team. We did do a segment on the Astros at the start of the year. And we will eventually bring back our guests to talk about the Astros at some point here because they've been playing great baseball here to start the season. And they played a great game against the Yankees last night that the Astros won 3-2. Well-pitched game as Dallas Keuchel, who was really owned the Yankees. I mean, ever since that wild card game a couple of years ago where he just blanked the Yankees, I think it was over 7 or 8 innings, shut down the Yankees again with only unearned run over 6 innings with 9 strikeouts, and outdueled Michael Pineda as the Astros are now 24-11. Keuchel is 6-0 after that win against New York. But aside from that great series between these two first-place teams, is you're going to have the Derek Jeter ceremony. And Jeter will have his number retired. He will be join, of course, the great pantheon of Yankee legends with Yogi Berra and Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris. You can go up and down through the history of this franchise and some of the great players who have come through Yankee Stadium. Look, we all know that Derek Jeter has his place among the top 10 players of all time in Yankee history, but now it's official that he will get his number retired, and then it's the number 2 on Sunday evening. And that's going to be a fun ceremony to watch. It's kind of unfortunate that's the Sunday night game. You kind of want to see that on the Yankees' own network, on the Yes Network, and not have to just deal with ESPN. But that's going to be a great ceremony. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of familiar faces there. You're probably going to see Andy Pettitte there and Bernie Williams, probably Joe Torre as well. You're going to see Mariano Rivera there. I hope you don't see A-Rod. I mean, chances are you probably will. He can't go out getting attention for Alex Rodriguez. And apparently there was an interview this week on CNBC where Jeter went on this interview show on CNBC, and A-Rod was there with him. And what I read was that Jeter didn't even know A-Rod was going to be there and was upset that A-Rod was sitting there. And if you see the image there, you see A-Rod with a big smile on his face and Jeter just kind of biting his lip. He has to sit next to A-Rod. We'll see if A-Rod is there, but I would imagine he probably will be, in spite of his feud with Jeter or a certain hatred with Jeter. I'm sure Mark Teixeira, who was a good teammate with Jeter, will be there. So you'll see a lot of familiar faces that have played with Jeter over those 20 years that he's been with this franchise. But again, what can you say about that guy? The guy who's been a tremendous winner for the Yankees for so many years. Whenever you think of New York, when you think of New York City, you think of the Empire State Building. You think of, I don't know, and even though it's in New Jersey, the Statue of Liberty. You think of a lot of the landmarks here in New York. You think about some of the great movies that have been made here in New York. You think about the Yankees, you think about Derek Jeter, you think about winning, you think about championships, and that's what he brought to this team, and that's what it was. So he was a definition, if you will, for that franchise and really for the city as well. So it'll be a stirring ceremony that we'll see here on Sunday. And when we come back next week, we'll talk about that ceremony. We'll have a couple of Yankee people on here next week, talk about it as well. So looking forward to seeing and the Yankees who always put on a good show, whether it be Old Timers Day or whether it be retirement ceremonies, jersey retirement ceremonies. Yankees always do a good job. I'm really curious to see how they're going to do this with Jeter on Sunday. Will they make this look a little bit like the Gatorade commercial that came out a couple of years ago, when Jeter first retired, and they had Frank Sinatra's My Way playing in the background of the commercial? Maybe they'll try to, emulate that commercial in some way and bring Jeter back onto the field through the dugout or something. But they're going to do something great. I know that. So we'll find out later on this weekend with the Derek Jeter ceremony. Take a quick break. We're back right after this. All right, folks, we're back here in the Mike program. Glad you could join us here as we continue on our show of this Friday, May the 12th. Right now, let's go around the Major League Baseball as we got a lot going on here today in baseball. We first started off, as I talked about a little bit just a moment ago, about the NL Central. Chicago Cubs right now have really been struggling. They are, 4-6 in their last 10. They are struggling right now at 500, and they will be playing the first-place Cardinals this weekend. The Cardinals, who, by the way, have now won 6 in a row. And this is a bit of a concerning moment right now for the Cubs because they came off that series sweep of the Yankees where they lost all 3 games to New York at home last weekend, including that crushing game they lost last Friday. They then lost 2 out of 3 to the first-place Colorado Rockies on the road, and now hit the road again here going into St. Louis for a 3-game series. I know we talked about it last week with Robert Villarreal, but I'm a little concerned about where the Cubs are right now. This is a team that really has not hit the baseball appreciably well this year. Outside of Chris Bryant, who is hitting around 300, this team has really struggled to get going. Addison Russell hitting at 227, Ben Zobrist at 222, Kyle Schwarber still on the interstate at 195. There's some issues here with this team offensively. And if this Cubs team, which by all accounts, you ask anybody out there right now, everyone thinks, and including myself, thinks that this team can get back to a World Series. Excuse me, if they can get their act together. They have the talent. We know they do. They have the experience, obviously. There's no reason why this team can't get back to a World Series and win a World Series. But before that ever happens, before you ever get to October, you got to get there first. And I understand it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I get that. It's a long season. But there are some concerns right now for this Cubs team. In addition to the poor hitting, the pitching has been inconsistent at times. Jake Arrieta still at an ERA that is over 5. John Lackey still struggling right now on the mound right now for this Cubs team. He has an ERA that is at 4.5. John Lester has been the best thing for this team going right now at the starting rotation, but only has 1 win. So the Cubs continue to struggle in the pitching department. They continue to struggle offensively, and they have got to figure it out. Now, if they go out there this weekend against the Cardinals and lose 2 out of 3, then you're going to start to hear a lot of people start to panic about this team. I'm being serious. If it hasn't started already, it will start soon. And the Cardinals have been playing good baseball. I mean, they have won 6 in a row. They're going to have a Leak on the hill tonight. He's 4-1. He has an ERA that's under 2. He's been great. He's going to take on a guy who has not pitched this year for the Cubs at the major league level in Butler. So again, the Cubs already have a disadvantage already tonight. And then you look at the rest of this series. Martinez, who has been mediocre this year. Wainwright, who has been mediocre this year for the Cardinals, pitching this series. You will see Lester and Arrieta. So after tonight, let's just say the Cubs lose tonight, which is entirely a possibility. They got to go out there and find a way with Lester, with Arrieta, to go out there and get some wins against the Cardinals, if they're going to be able to do it. You flip leagues, you take a look, you see the American League East, you see the Baltimore Orioles playing good baseball right now. They are 22-11. A lot of people wrote off the Orioles at the start of the year, but they've been hitting the ball very well. They're a very good offensive team at this point in the year. Manny Machado has had a great year, 9 home runs, 22 RBIs. Jonathan Scope has had a very good start to the year, leading the team in batting average. Adam Jones leading the team in hits. But what's really impressive here for the Orioles, and of course with the start, is got to be their pitching. Right now they have a team ERA under 4. Dylan Bundy has been phenomenal this year. He has an ERA at 2.17 and is 5-1. Wade Miley has pitched okay so far this year as well, an ERA at 2.45. So they're getting good pitching. Zach Britton has done a nice job in the closer's role with 5 saves. They even gotten Brad Brach. Say that name 10 times fast. Brad Brach has had 8 saves this year as well, also 6 holds. So the pitching has held up here for the Orioles. That's been the biggest difference for them so far this season. Now, will that be the case as we move along, we'll see. Again, a lot of people did not think about the Orioles at the start of the season because they didn't think that their pitching would be good enough. But so far, for the first month and a half, it has been so, as they stand tied a half game ahead, I should say, of the Yankees at 22-11 in the American League East. And again, that's as we go around baseball right now. The other big series, Colorado and Los Angeles. The Rockies playing good baseball, I believe playing good baseball all season. As I mentioned a moment ago, they took 2 out of 3 from the Cubs this week. And now they got the Dodgers coming into town. They did beat the Dodgers last night. Another big win for the Rockies. They won by a count of 10-7. A lot of people, when they thought about the Rockies this year, really didn't know what to make. They knew Bud Black was coming into a tough situation. A lot of people thought it was going to be the worst team in the league this year, and that's not been the case so far. You've seen guys like Matt Reynolds have a renaissance with his career. Here's a guy who never hits 300. He's hitting 339 on the year for them. Nolan Arenado has had a brilliant start to the year, as one would expect for a guy who's an all-star. Charlie Blackmon's had a good start to the season as well offensively with 8 home runs. So, okay, the power is not surprising here for the Rockies. You would expect that with this team, and you expect them to hit the ball well. The thing has been with the pitching for Colorado, that is where they have been the most surprising in a lot of respects, and they have gotten some pretty good starting pitching so far this year. The bullpen hasn't hurt them. Greg Holland has done a brilliant job out of that bullpen. He has 15 saves. He's making an argument for an all-star appearance as a closer with those 15 saves and an ERA of 1.13. So the Rockies, if they keep this up, and if they continue to play well, and they play well this weekend against the Dodgers, they win another game here, or even 2, for that matter, I think people will start taking them a little more seriously than they have so far this season, as they stand at 23-13. And they are also worthy, I think, of a discussion at some point by us on this program for a show at some point down the road. So that's where we stand here, folks, as we head into this weekend here. This is now this weekend of May the 13th, May 12th, 13th, and 14th here in 2017. So, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. Remember, follow us on Twitter, at OpenMicNJ on Twitter. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/OpenMicProgram. And also, remember, folks, to catch us live on Blog Talk Radio, as we'll have scheduled Mondays and Fridays. And also, keep in tuned here to the Sports Talk Nation. And at some point soon, I do have one more announcement here, folks. At some point soon, we are going to transition the show from Blog Talk Radio to YouTube full-time. It's going to happen. I don't want to give a date yet. We're still working on those kinks yet at this point, but we'll be making the move exclusively to YouTube at some point in the near future. So keep in tune with that. And again, follow us on the social media, on the Twitter and on the Facebook, to get all of that, as we will be making that move as well. Folks, been a pleasure. Talk to you next time right here on the Open Mic Program.